1 minute ago, the Sakurajima volcano in southern Japan did something no monitoring system predicted. At 0347 local time, August 18th, 2024, what remains uncertain? Pathway mechanism, new fracture, pre-existing conduit, pressurization timeline, days, months, years. Detection threshold, is improved monitoring technically possible? Recurrence probability, rare anomaly or new normal? Other volcanoes, can similar eruptions occur elsewhere? 3 possible interpretations. 1. Anomaly, rare event, unlikely to repeat on human timescales. 2. Periodic, Sakurajima has done this before, 1967, 1974. 3. Transition, volcano entering new eruptive phase, may repeat frequently. 15 research teams across Japan are analyzing the August 18th event. Seismologists are developing algorithms to detect subtle precursors at millisecond resolution. Geochemists are sampling gases for mantle-derived tracers. Geodesists are deploying seafloor deformation sensors. Petrologists are studying mineral textures for ascent rate clues. The investigations will continue for months. Peer-reviewed papers will emerge slowly. Provisional conclusions may be revised. Sakurajima's surveillance hasn't decreased since August 18th. It's intensified. Seismometers are reviewed hourly instead of daily. Gas measurements are continuous instead of periodic. Thermal cameras are analyzed by AI algorithms for subtle temperature anomalies. The network is watching for any indication that the volcano is preparing to repeat its behavior. But the truth remains, if Sakurajima erupts the same way tomorrow, the warning window might still be under 5 minutes. Kagoshima has existed in Sakurajima's shadow for over 1,000 years. The city has been buried in ash, evacuated from lava flows, and rebuilt after pyroclastic surges. Yet it persists. The relationship isn't one of conquest or control, it's coexistence with a force that operates on geological time, indifferent to human schedules or preferences. Modern volcanology has achieved extraordinary capability. We measure ground deformation in millimeters, we sample gas concentrations in parts per billion, we image the Earth's interior with seismic waves. Yet all this measurement confronts a fundamental limitation. Volcanoes are chaotic systems. Prediction requires understanding every variable and its interactions. We don't have that understanding. We might never have it. Japan's approach to volcanic risk represents a social contract. The government commits to maximum feasible monitoring and transparent communication. The public commits to preparedness and accepting residual risk. Neither side can eliminate uncertainty. The August 18th eruption tested that contract. 0 casualties, not because the warning was adequate, but because chance favored people being indoors at 0347. The contract held, but it was fragile. Sakurajima's short warning eruption isn't an isolated Japanese problem. Volcanoes worldwide share similar plumbing magma reservoirs at various depths, pathways that can fracture, and pressure that can release suddenly. If Sakurajima can bypass detection systems, so can Vesuvius overlooking Naples, so can Rainier above Seattle, so can Merapi near Yogyakarta. The August 18th event is a reminder comprehensive monitoring reduces risk, but it doesn't eliminate it. This documentary was constructed from seismic data, ash analysis, gas measurements, and institutional records. The interpretation represents the current scientific consensus as of December 2024. That consensus will evolve. New data will refine estimates. Alternative hypotheses will be proposed and tested. The August 18th eruption isn't a closed case. It's an ongoing investigation. Can monitoring systems be improved to detect rapid deep source eruptions? Probably. Will they achieve 100% detection? No. The Earth's complexity guarantees there will always be eruptions that surprise us, mechanisms we haven't observed, pathways we haven't mapped, and timescales we haven't measured. The question isn't whether we can achieve perfect prediction, it's whether we can accept imperfect information and still make rational choices about risk. Sakurajima hasn't stopped erupting since August 18th. Small eruptions continue every few days, typical for the volcano. The monitoring network watches each one, searching for patterns that might indicate another deep source event is building. The data accumulates, the mountain doesn't explain itself, and 600,000 people in Kagoshima continue their lives, navigating the space between preparation and normalcy. Sakurajima's investigation continues. Monitoring networks are being upgraded. Research papers are in preparation. If you want updates grounded in data rather than speculation, signal without noise, subscribe. The volcano is still active, science is still watching, and the next eruption, whenever it comes, will teach us something new. Confirmed as of October 30th, 2024, eruption onset 034708 JST, August 18th, 2024, Precursory seismic activity, 3 seconds detectable. Plume height, 10,000 meters, confirmed by radar and satellite. Ashfall area, 850 km², Kagoshima Prefecture. Magma source depth, 8 to 12 kilometers, petrological/gas evidence. Composition, mafic andesite, olivine-rich, primitive. Volume ejected, 4.08 kilometers per cube. Preliminary estimate, casualties, 0 direct, 0 indirect, 0 indirect. Economic impact, $43 billion, 287 MIM USD. Preliminary. What the data cannot yet answer. An alternative explanation came from Dr. Hiroshi Shinohara at the Geological Survey of Japan. The deep reservoir had been pressurizing silently for months or years. Once a critical threshold was reached, the overlying rock fractured catastrophically, opening a pathway that allowed near-instantaneous pressure release. The eruption wasn't preceded by gradual ascent signals because there was no gradual ascent, only sudden fracture and explosive decompression. The team searched Sakurajima's historical record for similar events. Most of the volcano's 18,000-plus documented eruptions since 1955 followed the standard precursory pattern. But 7 eruptions, less than 0.04%, had occurred with warning windows under 30 minutes. Those events had been attributed to monitoring gaps or data transmission failures. Now they appeared potentially significant. Had Sakurajima done this before, just rarely enough to be dismissed as an anomaly? By 06 on August 18th, Kagoshima was buried under ash. The weight collapsed carports and greenhouses. Visibility dropped to 50 meters. Respiratory mask sales exhausted within 2 hours. Kagoshima Airport suspended all operations due to runway clearing requirements, and volcanic ash destroys jet engines. The Kyushu Shinkansen bullet train service halted. Ash contaminates electrical systems. Ferry services across Kagoshima Bay stopped. The city was isolated. Volcanic ash is conductive when wet. At 07:15, rain began mixing with the ash fall. Power substations across Kagoshima Prefecture started experiencing short circuits. Grid operators initiated controlled shutdowns to prevent equipment damage. By 08, 140,000 residents were without electricity. Water treatment plants, dependent on power, shifted to backup generators. Cell towers lost commercial power, reducing mobile coverage by 60%. The modern infrastructure enabling emergency response was degrading. At 08:30, Kagoshima Prefecture's Board of Education faced a decision: keep schools closed or reopen after ash removal operations. The ash itself wasn't immediately toxic, but respirable particulates posed respiratory risks, especially for children and the elderly. Volcanic glass shards in the ash can cause eye and lung irritation. The decisions: schools remain closed for a minimum of 5 days pending air quality assessment. 180,000 students affected. Parents who couldn't work from home faced childcare crises. Kagoshima Prefecture produces 60% of Japan's tea crop and significant sweet potato harvests. The August 18th ashfall occurred during a critical growth period. Tea leaves coated in ash become unmarketable. Sweet potato fields require extensive remediation before the next planting. Preliminary agricultural damage estimates for 8.2 billion, 55 million USD. Despite the lack of warning and 600,000 people in the immediate impact zone, no deaths or serious injuries were attributed to the eruption. The 03:47 timing, middle of the night, people indoors were fortuitous. Had the same eruption occurred at 15:47, with people commuting, children at outdoor school activities, and ferries at sea, casualties would have been likely. The outcome was fortunate. It wasn't a validation of preparedness. January 12, 1914. Sakurajima's most powerful eruption in recorded history began with less than 6 hours of warning. Lava flows emanated from fissures on the western flank, advancing 3 kilometers and connecting the island to the Osumi Peninsula. The eruption lasted until May, producing 1.5 cubic kilometers of ejecta. Approximately 58 people died, most from earthquakes and building collapses rather than direct volcanic hazards. The 1914 event established Sakurajima as a major volcanic threat and catalyzed Japan's systematic volcano monitoring program. Sakurajima's August 18th event fits a rare but recognized pattern. Volcanoes occasionally erupt with minimal precursory activity. Mount Ontake, Japan, 2014, erupted with less than 10 minutes warning, killing 63 hikers. White Island, New Zealand, 2019, erupted without detectable precursors, killing 22 tourists. Wakari, 2019, similar scenario. The mechanism varies, but the outcome is consistent. Monitoring systems designed to detect gradual magma ascent fail when eruptions occur via rapid fracture or sudden pressure release. Many short warning eruptions are phreatic steam-driven explosions caused by groundwater contacting hot rock, not direct magma ascent. These can occur with near-zero warning because no new magma movement is required. However, Sakurajima's August 18th eruption was magmatic, confirmed by the fresh magma in the ash. It wasn't phreatic, it was a different mechanism. Deep source magma achieving surface eruption via a pathway that generated minimal detectable signals. Tokyo. Cabinet Office Headquarters. 26 hours after the eruption, Japan's Central Disaster Management Council convened an emergency session. Present Prime Minister's representatives, Minister of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, Director of JMA, leadership from the Geological Survey of Japan, and volcanologists from 6 universities. The question, how should Japan's volcanic monitoring and alert system be revised in light of an eruption that bypassed existing warning protocols? Japan's volcanic alert system uses 5 levels. 1. Normal through 5. Large-scale eruption imminent. Sakurajima had been at level 2. Do not approach crater for years. Appropriate for its frequent small eruptions. At 0347, it jumped directly from 2 to 4. Prepared to evacuate. Within 90 seconds, skipping level 3. Do not approach volcano. Some council members argued for maintaining Sakurajima permanently at level 3 or 4. Others countered, false alarms erode public trust and economic vitality. The volcano erupts hundreds of times per year. Permanent high alert status would normalize the warnings. Dr. Yamamoto presented proposed network upgrades, double the number of deep seismometers to better detect activity at 815 km depths. Install borehole strain meters capable of detecting microdeformation. Expand gas monitoring to include helium-3, helium-4 ratios, which indicate mantle contribution. Deploy seafloor seismometers in Kagoshima Bay to capture signals from offshore magma pathways. Estimated cost $4.8 billion, 32 million USD. The Minister of Land acknowledged the dilemma. No monitoring system can guarantee 0 false negatives. Volcanoes are complex systems. Rare eruption mechanisms will always exist beyond current detection capabilities. The goal isn't perfect predictions risk reduction. Japan's volcano monitoring prevents casualties in 99% plus of eruptions. The August 18th event represented the 1% that current systems can't catch. Accepting that limitation, the Council approved the network enhancement proposal and committed to public education, emphasizing residual risk. 12 days after the eruption, the data picture is substantial but incomplete. Evidence for deep magma source, olivine-rich mineral assemblage, primitive composition, SO2/ACO2 ratio 2.1 versus baseline 6 to 8. Eruption temperature 980 Dursley plus 50 Dursley above typical. Crystal textures, rapid ascent indicator, estimated source depth 8 to 12 kilometers versus typical 3 to 5 kilometers. The deep magma source explained the lack of warning, but it raised a more troubling question. How did magma ascend 8 to 12 kilometers through the crust in under 3 seconds of detectable seismic activity? Dr. Yamamoto and his team at JMA focused on this question throughout August 18th. They analyzed seismic waveforms with increasing time resolution. At millisecond scales, subtle patterns emerged. The hypothesis: Sakurajima's plumbing system had developed a new pathway, not the established conduit feeding the summit craters, which is well mapped by decades of seismic tomography. A secondary route, potentially a near-vertical fracture or dike, that allowed rapid, low-friction ascent. Magma moving through such a pathway would generate minimal seismic energy, like water flowing through a smooth pipe versus a rough rock. With seismometers showing baseline activity, with gas sensors reading normal flux, and with tilt meters indicating no deformation, the volcano exploded. A vertical eruption column reached 10,000 meters in under 8 minutes. Ash blanketed Kagoshima, a city of 600,000 people, still asleep when the eruption began. And when scientists analyzed what happened, they discovered Sakurajima had found a way to erupt that bypassed every warning system designed to detect it. This isn't about monitoring failure. Sakurajima is one of the most heavily instrumented volcanoes on Earth. 53 seismometers within 10 kilometers of the summit, 24 continuous GPS stations, 16 gas sampling points. Thermal cameras are operating 24/7. Doppler radar tracking ash plumes. The Japan Meteorological Agency maintains real-time surveillance that has successfully predicted hundreds of eruptions over 5 decades. Until this one, what scientists found in the ash samples, in the seismic records analyzed retroactively, in the gas chemistry measured during the eruption, explains why Japan's world-class monitoring network had no warning. Sakurajima didn't stop giving signals. It changed what signals it gave, and that difference matters. The question isn't whether monitoring technology failed. It's whether Sakurajima has fundamentally altered its eruption mechanism and whether other volcanoes worldwide might do the same. Sakurajima rises from Kagoshima Bay in southern Kyushu, Japan's third largest island. The volcano sits just 4 kilometers from Kagoshima's city center, closer than any other active volcano to a major population center on Earth. This proximity isn't new. People have lived in Sakurajima's shadow for over 1,000 years. What's new is the surveillance architecture built around it. Since the 1955 establishment of the Sakurajima Volcano Observatory, Japan has constructed the world's densest volcanic monitoring array. The system operates on redundancy. Multiple sensor types measure the same phenomena from different angles. Seismic stations detect ground vibrations. GPS receivers track inflation and deflation. Tilt meters measure slope angle changes down to microradians. Gas sensors sample sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide continuously. The network has detected precursory signals for over 18,000 eruptions since 19... Sakurajima's typical eruption sequence is predictable. 6 to 12 hours before an eruption, seismometers detect volcanic tremor, the continuous vibration signature of magma ascending. 3 to 6 hours before, tilt meters register summit inflation as magma accumulates in the shallow conduit. 1 to 2 hours before, gas flux increases as volatiles separate from rising magma. Then eruption. The warning window has allowed evacuation of summit areas, suspension of ferry operations, and rerouting of air traffic thousands of times. On August 17, 2024, every monitoring parameter read normal, seismic activity 12 small earthquakes in 24 hours, consistent with background, GPS displacement, less than 1 millimeter across the network. Tilt, no significant deviation. Gas flux, 800 tons per day of sulfur dioxide, within expected range. At 23 the overnight shift at JMA's monitoring center logged conditions as stable, no alerts were issued. At 03:47:08 JST, seismometers registered a sudden onset tremor, not the gradual crescendo typical of magma ascent, an abrupt signal appearing within 3 seconds, amplitude immediately at moderate levels. 12 seconds later, infrasound sensors detected the acoustic signature of a sustained eruption column. 23 seconds after initial detection, the first eyewitness reports arrived, a massive ash plume visible from downtown Kagoshima, illuminated by volcanic lightning. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, duty volcanologist at JMA, was at the monitoring center when the alarms triggered. His first action, verify instrument function. Sensor malfunction, all stations reporting. Network failure, full connectivity. He accessed thermal cameras pointed at the summit. Confirmed, major eruption in progress. At 03:48, he activated the emergency notification system. Ashfall warnings were transmitted to 1.2 million residents across Kagoshima Prefecture. Eruption alert level raised from 2 to 4 in under 90 seconds. Within an hour, Yamamoto's team began retroactive analysis. They pulled all sensor data from the preceding 48 hours, frame-by-frame review of thermal imagery, minute-by-minute gas measurements, searching for missed signals. By 06:00 preliminary conclusion, there were no missed signals. The eruption occurred with precursory activity indistinguishable from background noise. At 05:20, as dawn broke over Kagoshima, a field team from Kyoto University's Disaster Prevention Research Institute deployed to collect ash samples. Fresh volcanic material carpeted the city rooftops, streets, and vehicles under 3 to 7 centimeters of gray tephra. Using sterile collection bags, they gathered samples from multiple locations. Priority material from the first 20 minutes of eruption, representing the initial ejecta from depth. The samples reached the laboratory in Kyoto by 08:45. Dr. Yuki Tanaka performed X-ray diffraction analysis on the ash samples at 10:30. The crystalline composition appeared immediately unusual. Sakurajima typically erupts andesitic magma with intermediate silica content, characteristic mineral assemblage, plagioclase, pyroxene, magnetite. But this ash contained elevated proportions of olivine and clinopyroxene minerals associated with more primitive, mafic magmas from greater depth. Gas measurements during the eruption showed anomalous ratios. Sulfur dioxide to carbon dioxide ratio 2.1 compared to Sakurajima's baseline of 6 to 8. Lower sulfur, higher carbon dioxide. This signature indicates deeper source material. Magma that spent less time in shallow storage, where sulfur preferentially degasses. The gas chemistry pointed to the same conclusion as the mineral assemblage. This eruption tapped a deeper reservoir. Thermal cameras recorded eruption column temperatures of 980 duros at 500 meters altitude, approximately 50 duros hotter than typical Sakurajima eruptions. Higher temperature correlates with less evolved magma, material that hasn't cooled and crystallized extensively in shallow storage. Combined with the mineral and gas evidence, the thermal data confirmed Sakurajima had accessed a deeper, hotter, more primitive magma body,